Wow, okay, so all that's left now is the post detail component, which at the moment we ripped out the prop it depended on, which was the update post prop. And if we look at this component, again, there is quite a bit of logic here. And anytime we see that, in particular, like the fact that not all of this is related should tell us something, which is that there's probably a refactor due here. And it would probably be smart, again, to like break this component into maybe multiple, well, first of all, multiple components and maybe even multiple routes. Maybe a protected route at the post's ID edit URL that only lets users who own the post edit it. And then the current route would display the component with the ability to rate it if the user doesn't own it. And so to do that, though, we need some way inside our app to make sure that there's some nested routing inside here. And if we were to start to modify this even more, things would get, really dicey. Fortunately, though, React Router DOM provides this really easy way to do nested routing. And to do that, we'll actually need to go into our post detail component and do a slight refactor. The first thing we need to do is we're gonna refactor this so that the post detail component either renders a post detail view component or a post detail edit component, depending on the route. And so we'll need to create both of those components. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a post detail view component, and I'm going to create a post detail edit. So post detail view and post detail edit component. And so these are the two components that we're going to render inside of our post detail component depending on the route. But there's still the situation of all of this crazy logic that's associated with a single post. And so we're going to want to definitely extract that onto its own custom hook. And so let's create that. We'll touch source, hooks, use, post, detail. And again, we could probably break this into like a couple different custom hooks and maybe compose them or use them separately. But for the time being, we're just going to stick with the system we have currently. So with our custom hook, our post detail custom hook here, let's open this up. And we're going to have to extract like a ton of logic in here. So let's just do it in pieces. Cool. So the first thing we're going to do is we'll take all of this here, all of our dependencies, or everything we're importing, all of our imports here. And we probably won't need this one, the React Router DOM use params. We'll just take that from the component and we'll pass it in, just to make our lives slightly more simple. We're also probably going to want to use the posts context. So we'll say import use posts context from contexts posts. And then we'll have our export const use post detail, and instead we'll have this take in the post ID. And so it will have a different post detail hook or a fresh version for each post, for every new post ID. And then we'll take all the logic here, including this silly little function that we should probably refactor and maybe even put inside the hook, but for now we'll just leave it out here. And like there's a lot of interesting stuff going on here that we'll probably want to change. But then we'll go ahead and take all of this logic here, and let's take it all out and throw it in here. Bam. Okay, now, taking a look at this, let's just like at least document exactly what we have here. The first thing we have, and we don't need that anymore. Good. And we're missing our update post function, but we can get it from the post contexts. So let's actually grab it from our post context. We'll say const update post equals use posts context. That's why we have it in the first place, right? And so doing that should, okay, cool. There seems to be no errors here at the moment. Okay, cool. Now let's actually go in and document what we have here. We have a few things. We are storing the actual post itself. We're storing the rating for the post, the current rating for the post, so that we can, that's not the current rating for the post. That's actually the rating if a user wants to give their own rating. We're storing a state variable so that the user can evaluate that post. We're also storing the caption, which is the current caption for the post, but only for the owner of the post to be able to edit it. Then we have 3 different flags for isFetching, if it's actually fetching the post from the API, isUpdating, if the user is currently updating the post, sending a request to the API, and isSavingRating, which is checking to see if another user is coming to this post and saying, hey, I want to evaluate it, and they send that result to the API, and we are waiting for that response as well. Then we're storing the error in a state variable as well, and we have this useEffect hook that is calling this fetchPostById function, which takes in the post ID and all of the state updaters, and then it just calls those state updaters. And we totally could have put that inside this function here, but then we would have had to add it to all the dependency arrays. You have to make sure it didn't change, and there's a bunch of other things here that are just, at the moment, it's slightly easier to do it this way. We could also instead use things like the useCallback hook or useMemo hook that are provided by React, but we actually aren't going into them in this video just because it's already long enough, and in this series is already long enough, so we're just going to leave it as it is for now. And then we have 2 different event handlers. We have the handleOnUpdate function, which ensures that when the owner of the post wants to update their post, we have a function that is able to do that, makes that API call, and the same for when a user wants to save a rating for this post. Then we're saving 2 other things here, which is a userIsLoggedIn Boolean, which is just checking like, hey, is this user logged in? Which we could probably change here now to ensuring that it is the application initialized and is the user logged in. So we should probably do that. We should make sure, hey, user and initialized, and say user is logged in equals initialized, and let's say Boolean user.username. Cool. Now this one here is actually kind of interesting. This user owns post. See that right there? I don't know how I feel about that. There might be a better way to do this, and we'll examine that in a second. But just extracting all of this out of the post detail is going to make our lives a lot easier. So we have all of this logic, and let's return or expose a few of these state variables just so that we can actually use them. And this is going to be a pretty long list of state variables here. We have the post, the error, the rating. We want to be able to set the rating. We have isFetching, I think. Yep. We have, let's see what else we have. IsUpdating, isSavingRating. We have isUpdating, isSavingRating. And we also have some, we have the caption, right? Yep, caption, set caption. Oh boy, we have a few more, don't we? We have the handlers. We have the handle on save rating. We have the handle on update. And we have our 2 user flags here. Our user is logged in and our user owns post. Wow. Okay, let's save those. And then let's go back to our post detail. And we no longer need this as well. And let's go ahead and import. Let's get rid of all of these other imports since we no longer need them. And let's import usePostDetail from hooks usePostDetail. And then we can get rid of this update post here because all of that is handled inside our usePostDetail hook. So there's a lot of variables we'll want to use here. We'll say usePostDetail. Okay, and then instead of just typing these all out ourselves, let's just go ahead and go back into our usePostDetail hook and grab all of those variables that we're exposing and just pass them right there. Now, remember, we actually do need one of these. We need this post ID because we want a fresh set of state variables for each different post. And so every time we get a new post ID, we want it to be an entirely different system or an entirely different set of state variables. And we want to make sure that if that post ID changes, that it fetches the new post. So we actually do need some of that here. So let's import that back from React Router DOM. Use params from React Router DOM. And then let's pass that post ID to our usePostDetail. Okay, cool. Let's stop for a second, check it out. Let's save it here, and let's make sure we have no errors. Okay, looks good. Can we go to it? Looks like it's still working. Cool. Cool, can I rate this? Yes, I can. The rating still works. Fantastic. Okay. Now we're ready to go in and do our nested router refactor.